Okay, so in this brief video, I'm going to talk about some international news, just highlighting what's been going on. And this is separate from the three big stories. Just this country's doing this country's doing that country's doing this. So we're going to start in Russia with Simon Yun. And there she says, there is only one conclusion. Our former partners, the West, can draw from the BRICS and from Georgia. So, the BRICS conference was just recently and it was a big to-do. Nothing really came of it, but they were making it like, see, look how awesome Russia is that they can coordinate with all these other countries. And Georgia, it's happening with the elections. But there's only one conclusion. This world no longer listens to you. Get used to it. This world, like Russia and whoever Russia's working with, is no longer listening to you. Get used to it. It will only get worse. You can destroy the world that doesn't listen to you, move to Mars, or get used to it, like just being dismissive of the West. Russian spokesperson Maria Zakharova for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has made baseless claims against Latvia, alleging discrimination against Russian-speaking citizens. This is one of their pet peeves. Anybody who speaks Russian needs to have an extra level of guarantee of safety for some reason. Even in countries that Russia formerly, especially in countries that Russia formerly occupied, that they no longer have any sway in, like Latvia. She warned that if Latvia doesn't cease what she calls violations of international norms, it could face consequences in the UN International Court. Well, I think that's a great idea, and I think that Putin should personally bring those charges to the International Criminal Court and just see how it all works out, because that's a good idea. Okay. Now, in Latvia, a monument to the Russian Field Marshal Barclay de Tolly has been demolished in Riga. Riga is the capital of Latvia. The mayor of the Latvian capital called the statue a symbol of Russian imperialism. And Barclay de Tolly was one of the key Russian military commanders of the Napoleonic Wars and the de facto commander-in-chief of the Russian army at the beginning of Napoleon's invasion in 1812. This monument to the field marshal was erected in Riga in 1913. It was evacuated in 1915. It was later lost, and then it was restored in the early 20th century, 21st century, and so now it's being taken back down. Okay, meanwhile, Lithuania. Love Lithuania. Been there 3 times. Beautiful country. Labas to my Lithuanian friends. Lithuania punches above its weight. It's delivered new military aid package to Ukraine, including generators, ammunition, mortar shells to prepare for the upcoming winter. Since the beginning of the war, Lithuania has provided over 705 million euros in military support, totaling more than $1 billion in overall assistance. Now, if we're going to think about in my earlier video, I showed you what how the number of minefields within like Ukraine's the size of the state of Texas, and the number of minefields contaminating are about the size of Pennsylvania and Delaware within that land. Lithuania is about the size of West Virginia in population. So a tiny little state, about 3 million, something along those lines. Lithuania is just like this tiny little Baltic state that is doing so much, punching above its weight, and thank you to my Lithuanian friends. Norway will increase its support for Ukraine's Air Force with an additional contribution of 1.3 billion Norwegian kroners, which will fund the procurement of weapons and spare parts for F-16s, and that's awesome as well. Now, again, with all of this, it's a matter of how fast can you get these kinds of things to the battlefield, because that's what's going to be really, really important here. And it's not just Norway. Norway's agreeing to this. Lithuania has just dropped it. And then here we see this. Finland's in the act as well. Like the Baltic countries, the Nordic countries, these guys are just really on top of things. Poland is within that grouping of these countries that are just really very hawkish in Ukraine's defense. Finland seizes $40 million of Russian properties in Finland to hand it over to Ukraine. In an unprecedented move, Finnish authorities have started confiscating Russian Federation property in Finland. Over the past week, confiscated properties include locations in Åland and close to a military base in Helsinki, amounting to several millions. So that's what's happening there. Telling you, this like international tour is really interesting. Okay, so it's not just there. Here's the United States. The United States is set to transfer. Now, again, remember, Ukraine has only gotten 10% of what it's been promised in 2024, but the United States is set to transfer 2,000 Humvee armored vehicles to Ukraine, as reported by Forbes. Now, this article is important because it gives you some context. Amid heavy fighting, Ukraine has recently suffered substantial vehicle losses, with OSINT analysts confirming over 220 vehicles lost just in October. Heavy fighting in October, right? I mean, we're going to have the highest Russian casualty rate since the war began in October, and nearly 2,000 since the year's start. So 2,000 lost vehicles, they're replenishing. So it's essentially replenishing everything that they lost this year. These figures represent only visually confirmed losses, meaning actual numbers are likely higher. Nearly 2,000. Here's 2,000. Okay. With a need for replacements, the U.S. is well positioned to meet Ukraine's demand, as 60,000 Humvees are currently being phased out anyway, so they're about to be decommissioned. So this is good to be sending over to Ukraine, get it off our books, out of our storage, somewhere where it can be useful. Okay, last couple of things. Darth Putin, we're able to bomb, murder civilians for one reason only. You permit it. That's right. I mean, if the West was not collectively sitting on their hands and saying, we just don't want to escalate, we don't want to upset what Putin might do and have him do something worse. Right now, there's some talk that Poland was interested in intervening and potentially shooting down missiles, but they're waiting for the green light from the U.S., which the U.S. I don't think is likely to give, especially not 1 week before the election. But even after the election, I'm not sure that the U.S. will give that green light. So that's why this kind of thing continues. It's because we allow it to. And this is not new historically. I saw this and I thought, wow, that's really interesting, this cartoon. This is a 1930s cartoon. It's a reminder that criticism of the West's weak response to Russian imperial aggression in Ukraine is nothing new. Here's the U.S., here's England, and here's Russia. This is Stalin. This is in the 1930s. And there's Ukraine. And there's the U.S. and England just looking on as Russia is doing what Russia has been doing. And it's really tragic. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to me now. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. Thank you for contacting journalists and letting them know what's been going on with the human safari that I talked about in the daily brief this morning. Thank you more than anything for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.